Tokyo. With almost 38 million inhabitants, the capital of Japan is the largest metropolitan region in the world. An additional 10 million visitors are expected to attend the 2020 Olympic Games, a challenge of previously unknown dimensions in terms of safety technology. Tokyo's citizens are used to a lot of things. Their city is located in one of the most active earthquake zones in the world. Natural forces such as typhoons and heat waves cause deaths and injuries every year. Nevertheless, Tokyo still ranks #1 on the Global Safe City Index. But the Olympic Games could also bring global threats such as terrorism and cyber attacks to the city. Tokyo is hoping for safe games and is meticulously preparing for the West. The most expensive security concept in the history of the Games is being developed with great technical and personnel effort to protect athletes, visitors, and not least the inhabitants of the city. On the occasion of the Urban 20 Mayors Summit, the mayors of the G20 capitals will meet in the Shinjuku district to exchange experiences, also with regard to security. The host is the governor of Tokyo, Yuriko Koike.
Now, I'd like to propose a toast to the success of the conference, to your health, and to the prosperity of the cities you lead. Cheers, kanpai.
Time magazine counts Miss Koike among the 100 most influential people in the world. She is responsible for the success of the Olympic Games and for the safety of guests from all over the world.
Omotenashi means we warmly welcome you as a guest and will do everything we can for your well-being.
In order to ensure the well-being of residents and guests, the city is making enormous efforts to protect itself from earthquakes. The earth shakes about 1,000 times a year here. A special earthquake-proof construction is obligatory for all Olympic venues. The Sky Tree shows how self-confident the Japanese are in the face of this dangerous force of nature. The highest television tower in the world, with 634 meters, is a tourist attraction and symbol for many centuries of experience in the construction of earthquake-proof buildings. However, the engineers had to come up with something new for the megastructure. Mr. Nakanishi implemented the construction. He knows the secret of this tower.
When I first heard that I was allowed to take over the planning for the Sky Tree, I was very embarrassed. I was unsure and thought, can I really do that? But it's such an important and big project that only happens once in a lifetime. And it's also a great honor, so I was grateful. With all the support of a lot of people, and really a lot of people helped, the project could be realized. I'm very happy about that.
In an earthquake, the inner column swings like a pendulum in the opposite direction to the outer steel frame of the tower. The oscillations cancel each other out.
The tower is built in such a way that the central column and the outer steel structure move slightly differently in the event of an earthquake.
The flexible construction of the Sky Tree should withstand earthquakes of up to 8 on the Richter scale undamaged.
In the range between 125 and 250 meters, the columns are connected with this oil silencer. It checks that the central column does not touch the steel tower. If there is wind, the column in the tower swings approximately 5 meters at a height of 500 meters.
The first visitor platform at a height of 350 meters can be reached by express lift in 50 seconds. Visitors need another 30 seconds to reach the top platform at a height of 450 meters.
When I see how many visitors come to the Sky Tree and enjoy the view from the top, I am often very touched. Sometimes it even makes me cry.
During the last big earthquake in 2011, the Sky Tree was close to completion. A first test which it passed without any problems.
Of all of the parts of the Sky Tree, I love the central column the most. Ich liebe. That's what they say in German, isn't it? If you allow me. Ich liebe die Shinbashira. I love the central column.
The entire central column of the Skytree, weighing 10,000 tons, stands on gigantic rubber buffers. They are the central feature of the so-called floating design. The model shows how it works. The left house stands on a sort of rubber plugs. They absorb the movements of the earthquake. On the outskirts of Tokyo, the Taisei construction company has installed huge vibrating tables in order to simulate and study the movements during earthquakes in a realistic environment. Large steel plates are moved jerkily and with tremendous force in vertical and horizontal directions by hydraulic pistons. This way, engineers can realistically reproduce historical earthquakes, such as the one in Kobe. Even lateral movements are absorbed by gigantic shock absorbers, such as those used in the construction of the Olympic Stadium. The entire weight of the structure is decoupled from the ground. Not a single wall of this multi-story residential building rests directly on the foundation. However, the engineers do have a little respect for the forces of nature.
As engineers, we naturally want to know whether and how well the system works. Nevertheless, we are afraid of a big quake and hope that in the end, none will come.
Because earthquakes are part of their life, the Japanese are prepared for them from childhood on. Exercises take place on a regular basis, in schools, in offices, on the subway. The foreign visitors of the Olympic Games pose the main risk factor. How can panic among the guests be prevented in an emergency? In Tokyo City Hall, Governor Koike presents a simple solution.
Please do not worry. This building is earthquake resistant.
This megaphone is for tourists who don't know where to flee to, especially the visitors who will come to the 2020 Olympics. The megaphone can provide multilingual information. It can say sentences like, run in this direction, or come here. And this in different languages, such as English, Chinese, Korean. This is an excellent megaphone.
But Ms. Koike has another ace up her sleeve. The city's Disaster Preparedness app provides further information and instructions in the event of a disaster. How earthquake-proof is the house I am in? Where is the nearest shelter? What do I do if my house is destroyed? Whether such an app will prevent panic among tourists is questionable. Down-to-earth tips like these may work in Japan, because showing fear is considered un-Japanese. Tourists, on the other hand, could make the event of an earthquake even more dangerous because they are afraid and show it. In Japan, it is a social agreement to keep feelings of fear to oneself in order not to unsettle others. Here, the community counts more than the individual. The omnipresent face masks do not serve one's own protection. People wear them so as not to infect their fellow human beings.
Of course, we don't know when an earthquake will occur, and we don't know when a fire will break out. But lately, probably caused by climate change, floods and typhoons occur more often. Tokyo, actually the whole of Japan, is well prepared in terms of security measures, especially being prepared for natural disasters anytime and at any event.
Japan's response to natural forces and climate change are unprecedented technical efforts. Nature is tamed by technology. Behind this inconspicuous entrance lies the world's largest underground construction of its kind. Its purpose? To protect Tokyo from flooding. G-Cans is nothing less than a huge diversion system for whole rivers. Mr. Takahashi's place of work is 22 meters underground. His job is to check a gigantic concrete water tank. 177 meters long, 78 meters wide, and 18 meters high. Each of the 59 columns weighs 500 tons. During a typhoon, water which could otherwise flood the city is intercepted here.
This is how it works. If the surrounding small and medium rivers threaten to overflow, their water flows into this facility and is then directed into the large Edogawa River. This is how we prevent flooding in Tokyo.
The columned hall leads into one of 5 huge underground containers, all connected by a 6.5-kilometer long tunnel. When all 5 cylinders are full to the brim, the water rises into the columned hall, from where it is pumped into an adjacent valley far away from Tokyo.
Last week on the 21st of May, the plant was completely filled with water. With the help of our pumps, we diverted the water into the Edogawa River.
The outer drainage channel for the capital area is the largest drainage system in the world, and also the most expensive, with construction costs of 2 billion euros. During his inspections, Mr. Takahashi checks whether, for example, smaller trees got caught in the system during the last flood. To do this, he has to descend all the way to the bottom of the cylinders.
We tried counting the stairs, but everyone arrived at a different result. Unfortunately, I can't tell you the correct number.
The facility, which was built just a few years ago, has already mastered various typhoons and heavy rains. During the last major typhoon in October 2019, however, it was unable to prevent flooding and fatalities. Tokyo was once built on islands in the water. At the end of the 19th century, the city was not called the Japanese Venice for nothing. Modern Tokyo is a testimony of a comprehensive effort to wrest space from nature and water. The remaining river courses are restricted by the dense buildings. Far more than earthquakes and typhoons, Tokyo fears a danger on the occasion of the Olympic Games 2020 with hardly any history in the country: terrorism. Control and protection of millions of viewers from all over the world is becoming a mega challenge for security authorities. Major events such as the Tokyo Marathon play an important role in the preparations, also with regards to coordinating the cooperation between police and private security companies. Governor Koike gives the starting signal. With almost 38,000 runners, the marathon is above all an important opportunity to test various safety systems. For the first time, the data of all runners are linked to a facial recognition system that will also be used at the Olympic Games. For those responsible, it is crucial to use the experience gained here to prepare for the Olympic Games. In the run-up to this, a number of security trade fairs take place. In the Congress Center Tokyo International Forum, companies show products for the defense against chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear attacks, all of which pose major threats in the context of the Olympic Games. At the same time, doctors are holding a conference to raise awareness for these challenges. Keynote speaker Dr. Hiroyuki Ishikawa is head of the Medical Association. He talks about dangers that have not yet played a role in the daily routine of local aid workers.
First of all, the purpose of today's conference is to make simple doctors, firefighters, and local government aware of the importance of counter-terrorism measures. For example, measures against chemical and biological attacks, radioactive contamination, and nuclear weapons. And we want to provide advice to the people involved in such measures, for example, through seminars. I believe that if a terrorist attack or an attack with ABC weapons strikes here, everyone will be very shocked at first. We will probably have to avert the initial shock and panic first. That is why we are organizing such a conference, to raise public awareness for this danger.
Once before, an attack hit the nation and its helpers completely unprepared. In 1995, 13 people died and thousands were injured in the Aum sect's devastating sarin attack on the Tokyo subway.
I think this was the first poison gas attack in Japan. The doctors didn't even think about their own safety back then. They wore no masks, no eye protection, and that's how they examined the patients. Japan has almost no experience with terror in everyday life.
But the terrorist threat is real, even in Japan. The Aum sect is still regarded as dangerous. Others see North Korea as a danger. But above all, homicidal maniacs are regarded as a potential threat, especially at major events. A single perpetrator hiding in the crowds is enough to cause enormous damage. That's why there's another race going on behind the scenes. On the 24th of July 2020, all security measures must be operational. Behind closed doors, Japanese high-tech companies are working under high pressure to find solutions to the many challenges. One of these companies is Seikon. They're preparing robots and drones for the Olympics in their own laboratory. Mr. Takahashi is responsible for the safety of the Olympic Games and the Tokyo Marathon. He warns his employees not to rely on technology alone.
Of course, a machine cannot do everything alone. There are many things that people have to do. It is incredibly difficult to develop a safety system in which man and machine work well together.
With 41 venues spread across the city, Tokyo will have to set up a wealth of access controls by 2020. They are being tested under difficult conditions at the marathon, because it rained.
In recent years, there has always been good weather during the Tokyo Marathon. But today, it's been raining since the beginning. When it rains, people wear rain capes and hold umbrellas. This has an effect on the safety precautions. We have the chance to make completely new experiences.
It's all about the perfect interaction between man and machine. Pocket controls, face recognition, and gapless route monitoring should guarantee a safe but also smooth process.
Unlike here at this marathon, many more events will take place simultaneously at the Olympic Games. We use these sporting events as an opportunity to gain experience.
Queues at checkpoints are particularly vulnerable to attacks. The waiting people stand outside the secured areas and are therefore unprotected targets in any kind of weather. The Games 2020 will take place in the hot month of July. An ID system such as the so-called wristband, which links every visitor to the data stored about him or her, allows faster checks. Of course, this also means that organizers and security companies have immediate access to the personal data of all athletes and spectators anytime and anywhere.
The bracelet serves to determine the identity of each individual. All runners gather around the town hall. In order to be allowed to gather there, you have to wear such a bracelet. This will be checked. Of course, data is stored there. To be able to check each individual correctly, an individual number is included. The data itself is stored on a server.
From the identification by wristband to the creation of motion profiles, it is only a small step. Another development, especially for big events, are linked body cameras. They're also used along the course during the marathon and tested for the Olympics.
Normally I work in a different field, but today I am working with this wearable camera. I patrol the road and make observations. Again and again I stop and look around. If we find anything suspicious, there's a surveillance center that monitors the images. They are looking at the pictures the whole time and then report to me. I then give them the information and continue taking pictures.
In addition, 140 fixed cameras are installed along the marathon route. There will be many more at the Olympic Games because cameras play a decisive role in the security concept. As a result, a flood of images arrives at the control centers. All of these have to be processed first.
Of course, as the number of cameras increases, it becomes more difficult to have all of them checked by security personnel. This is where we use artificial intelligence to detect unusual or suspicious situations. That's what we're testing right now.
An experiment carried out by Mr. Takahashi at the company headquarters shows how the images from the various cameras are evaluated using artificial intelligence. A man with a bag is filmed by a body camera as he passes by. The bag is put down somewhere and soon identified as a potential source of danger. The image of the suspicious object arrives at the headquarters. With the help of artificial intelligence, a computer searches all available previous images to recognize the bag and identify the person who left it there.
In order to determine as precisely as possible to whom the objects belong, the captured images are searched automatically. It would be incredibly difficult for a person to look through the huge amount of images. That's why we use artificial intelligence.
In the past, Japanese security companies have relied on personnel strength, discipline, and combat techniques. But the listed security company Alzo has come to realize that protection against many dangers will not be possible without artificial intelligence. The company's systems check the baggage at the airport during the Olympic Games.
We use artificial intelligence to check hand luggage. The AI system controls the X-ray images and marks potentially dangerous objects such as knives or liquids. We have fed over 30,000 conspicuous X-rays into the system so that it can assist the personnel with hand baggage checks.
Potential sources of danger are to be identified quickly and smoothly. Control still relies on the interaction between man and machine, but artificial intelligence learns with every control.
At the moment, artificial intelligence is still only supporting humans in their work.
For the Japanese society, the use of artificial intelligence has long been a survival strategy. The population is shrinking rapidly, and in the past year alone has decreased by over 400,000 people. Almost 1 in 3 is older than 65. That is a world record. The result is a shortage of personnel in many areas, even at the Olympics. The scheduled 20,000 police officers will not be enough to secure all 43 venues. Mr. Iwashita explains the challenges in the headquarters of the organizing committee.
We need a lot more security than we've needed in past games. If there's only one Olympic park, one security check is sufficient. This time, however, we have to carry out a security check at each individual venue.
While the construction works at the Olympic Stadium are still in full swing, the dimensions of the required security apparatus are becoming increasingly clear. In the meantime, the Olympic Committee has entered into alliances with a total of 100 large and small private security companies to protect the venues.
We had first thought of 14,000 security guards from the private sector, but I think that's not enough.
Currently, there are still almost 10,000 security personnel missing. To close this gap, Tokyo also relies on volunteers, who could be deployed after special police training. But so far, only few could be won over for this work. Many are afraid of the heat. Luckily, there is a rather Japanese way of dealing with this problem.
People often ask, is that a cleaning robot? That seems to be the first impression for most people.
In fact, Reebok X is a high-tech device for various applications. Today, the robot is tested in the underground corridors of Shinjuku Station. It has to prove that it can actually master its tasks.
It can do three things. Point 1, the robot can give customers information at the station. Point 2, it can detect suspicious people at the station. And point 3, it detects suspicious objects. We will test these 3 points today. The robot has the necessary senses for surveillance: eyes, nose, ears, mouth. It can activate these senses and thus take over the work of a guard.
Few people know the price of security. During its entire deployment, Reebok X transmits a wealth of information, including personal data, to the head office. The young woman who wants to know how to get to her platform doesn't just receive information, she turns into a piece of information herself. And so, quite casually, Reebok X checks everyone and everything.
Getting back to the Olympic Games, it is considered to position the robot in many places. Where exactly is not yet clear, but the robot will certainly do part of the work. We will make that possible.
The less personnel available, the more digital helpers are needed. Apparently, that's the Japanese motto.
Our goal is to improve the quality of security measures, even if the number of security personnel is decreasing.
This support is quite something. The built-in AI program can analyze and visualize body signals and behavior. Depending on the color, an individual is classified as aggressive or harmless. A further development is still in the test phase. It tries to counter the lack of personnel and at the same time expand the control options. The virtual policeman. He is to be deployed in the building security system. He provides information, but above all, he observes. And in an emergency, he even repels bad guys. That is, if they obey him. Not every security expert agrees with their Japanese colleagues in their unlimited trust in technology.
Japanese has different way to approach the problem. We have as well, so it's better to have general overview, how we can fix the issue. People, the problem now, they focus too much on the equipment solution. They don't focus enough on the education part. Everybody wants to have the best Mercedes or BMW in the world, but nobody has the driving license, basically. You know, so first, education, step by step, and then you choose the proper equipment to achieve what you want to do.
In the headquarters of the global technology group NEC, the central instrument of the Olympic security system is being developed: facial recognition. Mr. Nagamine and his team are constantly working on optimizing the system.
This time, on the occasion of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, people of various ethnicities from all over the world come to Japan. We have worked a lot with our face recognition system, but so far we have concentrated on one nationality. This is the first time that people come from all corners of the world. It's a challenge.
The Neo Face Watch system will not only recognize all 12,000 athletes and employees of the Olympic Games in real time, but up to 300,000 people working for the Games. The material from several cameras is compared with a so-called watch list, which contains the images of those with access rights and of unwanted individuals.
First of all, the system concentrates only on a few characteristic features in the face. We neglect all other information, such as hairstyle or beards, or even wrinkles. The human face always has certain characteristics that it retains even when it gets older. Our technique focuses on precisely these unchangeable characteristics.
Video cameras are at the heart of increasingly intelligent surveillance systems all over the world. What these systems can do often remains a secret. For quite some time now, it has no longer been a question of whether we are being observed, but rather of what the technology behind the cameras can find out about us. For the organizers of the games, questions about data security and privacy are at the very bottom of their agenda.
In order to make the event pleasant for everyone, we'll use the facial recognition systems effectively. Of course, there is no need to worry about privacy.
It's not easy to find critics in Japan who question this appeasement policy. One of them teaches at the prestigious private Waseda University in the heart of Tokyo. Professor Tajima particularly criticizes the lack of laws and the lack of transparency of the new surveillance technology, which is omnipresent on his campus too.
You should think about what happens with these images, where they go and what is done with them. No one knows if these images will be falsified or put into another context. You don't know anything about it. And then they tell you you can rest completely reassured. Basically, you can't feel reassured at all.
What do young students say about the omnipresent surveillance cameras?
I hardly notice the cameras. I am not at all aware of them in my everyday life.
Well, I think safety first. Because there are cameras and everything can be monitored immediately, I try to behave better.
I think I just have to consciously live with the risk. It offers many advantages to me.
Friday night in the trendy Roppongi district. Akira Saki puts her hand on a scanner in front of her favorite club, Octagon. Only with her handprint she can enter the club. Via app, Akira also supplied a wealth of other private data in advance. She says she feels safer here than in other clubs. She doesn't need money or a credit card here. You pay for your drinks by handprint only. That's how the club collects a lot of personal information on all of its visitors.
I think it's symbolic for our Japanese society. Although surveillance is getting stricter, people here don't see it as a problem. On the contrary, they find it practical. In general, people tend to think that surveillance is a good thing.
The managers in the corridors of NEC's headquarters are also quite relaxed when it comes to personal rights. At the time of the Olympics, there are other priorities.
I find that in Japan, compared to other countries, people get unnecessarily nervous when it comes to personal information. In Japan, too, people should consider the opportunities and benefits that camera technology offers to the population. People should concentrate on that. At the moment, this is still difficult in Japan. But I think everyone should work together here. We would like to take on a leading role as a company.
Security technology is no longer conceivable without cameras. Even Mr. Kurobe of Alzo doesn't know how many cameras in Japan now collect images and send them to surveillance centers of private security companies.
We don't have exact figures, but according to the internet, there are more than 5 million cameras active in Japan, and this number is growing steadily.
In Japan, the path to comprehensive camera surveillance seems to be mapped out. In neighboring China, this has already become reality. For a generation that has grown up with facial recognition, the practical advantages obviously outweigh the disadvantages. For Professor Tajima's generation, which still experienced political unrest in its own country, surveillance has a political dimension.
It's getting more and more. Simply everyone is monitored, even those who have nothing to do with terror. That's our reality. And it is not just about preventing crime or terror. If it goes without saying that ordinary citizens who are righteous and possibly legally politically active should also be monitored, then our society can no longer be described as democratic and free.
Why do so few Japanese question these developments? Despite all the high-tech, the country is deeply rooted in its traditions. At the district festival Sanja Matsuri, local deities are carried through the streets. Many Japanese pay homage to their Shintoistic gods, worship Buddha at the same time, and still call themselves atheists. Japanese are often pragmatic. Belief in technology and traditions don't seem to be contradictory to them either. This pragmatism runs through many areas of life, and perhaps also explains the pragmatic relationship to surveillance by state and industry, or the lack of fear of it. People here are well advised to clearly distinguish between their own personal matters and their social behavior. More important than anything else is the preservation of social harmony. Without it, there is no future. Denki University is located on the outskirts of Tokyo. This is where Japan's technical elite is trained. Here one is concerned with the security of security. For example, with the question of how well camera surveillance is protected against cyber attacks. For many years, Professor Zazuki was an advisor to the government on the subject of cybersecurity.
There are many web cameras and they are everywhere. They are linked via the internet. If the password settings of the network cameras are too weak or other security holes exist, the cameras can easily be hacked.
Hackers can use cameras to penetrate servers and manipulate them. The dilemma: the more cameras, the more potential weak points in the system. Even more dangerous, however, would be an attack that would paralyze all cameras at once.
There are also attacks that are unlikely to occur. But if they do, they pose a big problem. Let me put it this way. It could be an attack on the power system in the province, for example, especially if the attack doesn't focus on one place, but on several places at the same time. In one or two places, you can still fight the situation, but then you are quickly overwhelmed, which can have a big after effect. There is a great danger here.
Since the London Games, the dimensions of possible cyber attacks have become obvious. At that time, 165 million security events were identified. In 97 cases, the technical team had to intervene, and 6 were serious attacks. The cybersecurity team of the organizing committee knows what is expected of them.
Meanwhile, it has become a matter of course that complex IT systems are used at every event, probably also at corporate events. We will probably have more than 100 systems in use at the Olympic Games, a major competition event in which a large number of people take part. And this event will also be broadcasted worldwide. It will therefore be important to have a functioning cybersecurity system.
But are there enough professionals to really ensure the cybersecurity of the Games?
The Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry has conducted a study on cybersecurity. They found that there was a shortage of 30,000, maybe even 50,000 employees in this area.
With the 2020 Games in Tokyo, Japan wants to present itself as a leading technology nation. However, a lack of cybersecurity could jeopardize this goal. Especially since the attacks in Paris and Berlin, security has been one of the most important issues for all major cities. An exchange of experience takes place at the meeting of the G20 mayors. How does the governing mayor of Berlin assess the measures in Tokyo? Can he benefit from the experience of his colleague Koike? After all, security is also a big issue in Germany.
I think you have to be very careful. In Germany, we deal sensitively with this topic, and we find this form of data comparison difficult. Of course, it is also a balancing act. On the one hand, citizens rightly expect more security, and on the other hand, we do not want to restrict personal freedom. So in this respect, we say that these possibilities, these new data collections and camera techniques, will be used in selected places, above all, to solve crimes. As we all know, they normally do not prevent crimes. It must be possible in selected places, but we certainly do not want to install something like that on a comprehensive scale.
Those who attend the Tokyo Olympics should expect to leave their usual personal rights at home. Safety first. The citizens of the city and the visitors of the Olympic Games will benefit from this. This is the attitude of the organizers. The legal basis for the use of state-of-the-art security technology in Japan still has to be established.
In principle, there is no clear legal basis for the installation of surveillance cameras. It is actually a serious violation of privacy. It is a human rights problem to do something like this without a legal basis. The reality, however, is that an infinite number of cameras have been installed without establishing the legal basis for them.
Even the high-tech giant NEC would like to see clearer legal regulations.
It is very important that new standards are developed for the type of application and also for the procedure. Whether it's the country, the municipality, or private companies, we all need to set up new rules together. They must then be implemented by society, and people must deal with them in a natural way. This is the process we need here in Japan.
The lack of rules leads to an uncontrolled growth in the surveillance technology sector. The Tokyo startup Earth Eyes is an example of this. Engineers have developed a pre-crime program that interprets human movement patterns to identify potential criminals before they commit a crime. The managing director prefers to demonstrate it himself.
This camera has AI technology to identify only the suspects. For example, the camera does not react to normal customers in the store, but only to suspicious persons, such as shoplifters.
The Earth Eyes program checks the movements, measures the walking distance, recognizes the viewing directions, and converts all actions of the person into a profile in a database.
There are certain patterns of movement that are carried out unintentionally. If this is identified as a person's suspicious behavior, the computer only frames them with a red line and sends us an email.
The so-called Guardman System has already been installed in 2,000 retail stores. The underlying program is also implemented in robot systems used during the Olympics.
Let's talk about a situation with a suspect. A shoplifter comes into the shop and searches for the object of his desire. When he has found it, he does not take immediate action, but takes a step back. When other customers are nearby, he initially behaves inconspicuously and first looks around. The potential thief waits until all other customers are gone. As soon as the coast is clear, he approaches the item he wants to steal, puts it in his hand, hides it in his pocket, for example, and leaves the shop.
In the absence of legal regulations, Earth Eyes can also use its technology in other ways. The software allows to analyze the age and behavior of customers and to offer the results for marketing purposes. But the company Elsys goes even one step further. It pushes the possibilities of combining camera and image analysis to the extreme. The mental checker can supposedly derive the psycho-emotional state of a person from camera images. Micro-movements and vibrations in the face are the key to the psyche. The head of Elsys Japan, Mr. Yamauchi, is facing a self-experiment. His colleague explains how it works.
So this is the mental checker. Mental checker focuses on individual. The system analyzes this subject's mental states, not only the negative parameters, but also positive ones and physiological parameters as well. By using this system, his emotional states can be visualized. So you can visually see his emotional states by numbers and graphs.
Like the mental checker, the Defender X program derives the inner mental state from the observed movement patterns. A customer stands at the counter and knocks something over. A red frame immediately signals his increased level of aggression. That would be the moment to intervene. In long-term studies and with more than 100,000 test subjects, the company has allegedly found patterns of movement and vibration that show whether a person is in an unusual state of mind and would possibly be up to the task of committing a crime. The creators talk of an inner and outer aura they can detect. And what is Mr. Yamauchi's psycho-emotional state?
As you see, the system visualizes 10 emotional parameters: aggression, stress, tension, suspect, balance, charm, energy, self-regulation, inhibition, and neurostoicism. Those 10 parameters are visualized in numbers. Also, the system shows the balance of emotional levels in pie chart, and also the graph of how his emotional level moves in graphs. I think he was a bit nervous, so his negativeness was a bit large as well.
I was a little nervous about the camera. We use the program in job interviews when we hire people, for example, and also in Japan's nuclear power plants. The employees of the nuclear power plant, including those from external companies, are all measured by the mental checker. You don't have to use the mental checker every day, but after you've measured several times, the program recognizes how you feel on that day. So if you notice that there's something wrong with someone's parameters, you can mention it to them. It is a communication tool and helps employees to stay fit.
The use of this software is prohibited during the Tokyo Games. During the Sochi Games, Defender X is said to have exposed a number of potentially dangerous individuals already at the airport security. But the system contains a kind of black box, which the Russian parent company does not disclose. It's only a few steps from an automated behavior analysis to a totalitarian behavior control. Are people allowed to see everything without being observed? It's likely that the costs for the security of the Tokyo Games will exceed the €1 billion mark for the first time. How high the price of security will be for our privacy remains to be seen for the time being.
And of course, preparations are steadily progressing for the success of both events. One of the biggest tasks that I have at the moment is creating Tokyo's post-games legacy.
What this legacy will look like depends not only on the security of the games, but also on the long-term use of the new technologies. In any case, the marathon was concluded without any incidents. A successful test for the Olympic Games? Mr. Takahashi answers this question in the typical Japanese way, very modestly.
Of course it's not, but I'm glad that there were no accidents and that everything went well. These events only happen once. If something goes wrong, that's it.
The organizers do everything to make Mrs. Koike's wish come true, so people will keep the games in good memory.
I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be a success. Besides, the preparations are exhausting. I finally want the games to start.
One thing is certain. Anyone who travels to Tokyo for the Games should not be afraid of new technology. It may just happen that instead of a friendly Japanese, a robot will welcome the traveler at the hotel reception.